Welcome back to our channel. The heart of Al Pacino stopped beating in 2020. When paramedics returned him, something was irrevocably altered. The guy who gave us The Godfather is 84 years old and leads an unexpected existence. In debt after losing $50 million, making films he despises to make ends meet, and becoming a father at the age of 83 with a woman who was young enough to be his granddaughter. The greatest performer in Hollywood is now the most lonely, and the reasons for this are his dark beliefs about death and the turmoil surrounding DNA tests. On April 25, 1940, in New York City's East Harlem, Al Pacino was born. His Sicilian immigrants, Salvatore Pacino and Rosa Girardi, were attempting to establish themselves in America. They had a brief marriage. Pacino's father left to work as an insurance salesman in California when he was just 2 years old. In the South Bronx, Pacino's mother was left to raise him by herself with the assistance of his grandparents, Kate and James Girardi. They had traveled from the village of Corleone, Sicily, which would later gain notoriety due to The Godfather. In the 1940s and 1950s, Bronx life was difficult. His father's absence caused a rift that never fully healed, and his family struggled financially. However, his mother gave him a gift that would influence his life. He would often lose himself in the story on screen when she took him to the theater because she enjoyed movies. He was captivated by acting even before he realized what it was. Early moviegoing experiences sowed the seeds for a passion that would last a lifetime. Pacino became known to his pals as Sonny as he grew older. He was a bit crazy and was constantly pushing the envelope. He had already begun drinking and smoking by the time he was 9 years old. He began experimenting with marijuana when he was 13. He was always getting into trouble and showed little interest in education. Skipping class, fighting, and disobeying the rules became commonplace. After being expelled from several schools, he was accepted to the High School of Performing Arts. For someone like him, it seemed like the perfect place, but he left quickly. He left school at the age of 17 following a disagreement with his mother on his future. Having no formal education and no reliable employment, he drifted through his adolescence. Along with his pals, he ran without any clear direction. Drugs were used by some, and others got into trouble. Later, he would lose 3 of his best pals to drug overdoses: Cliffy, Bruce, and Petey. Pacino could have easily ended up in the same place, but he persevered for some reason. His restless energy was directed towards something greater than himself through acting, which became an escape. If it weren't for acting, he might not have made it out at all, he later stated. The losses that followed permanently altered him. Pacino was only 22 when his mother passed away in 1962 at the age of 43. Her death was more devastating to him than anything else because she had battled depression for years. James, his grandfather who had been like a father to him, also died a year later. In just 1 year, the 2 most significant individuals in his life had left. Later on, he referred to that period as the lowest point of his life. There seemed to be nothing left for him to cling to. He wrote about his suffering many years later in his memoir, Sonny Boy, which was called after the nickname his mother gave him. I might be able to meet up with my mother there if I'm lucky. I just want the opportunity to approach her and tell her, "Hey, Ma, look at what happened to me." Pacino plunged himself into acting after losing his mother and grandfather. It was not simple. Any job he could find, he took. Working as a postal clerk, busboy, messenger, or janitor in order to finance acting school. At Greenwich Village's HB studio, he met Charlie Lawton, an acting instructor who would go on to become one of his closest mentors. But there was always the issue of money. Sometimes he had nowhere to go in the evenings. When he had nowhere else to sleep, he would occasionally sleep at theaters or on the couches of friends. He had to sleep on the streets in the early 1960s while playing whatever menial parts he could find in underground theater plays because he was so destitute. In 1968, Al Pacino's career took a significant shift when he performed in Israel Horowitz's off-Broadway drama, The Indian Wants the Bronx. It had a run of 177 performances after its January 17 opening at New York City's Astor Place Theater. His portrayal of Murph exuded a raw energy that was both frightening and somehow human. His role as a violent troublemaker wasn't the only one. He was revealing the levels of his aggression. The industry took notice, as did the critics. The Obie Award for Best Actor went to him. John Cazale, his co-star, was awarded Best Supporting Actor. Horowitz also took home one for Best New Play. Behind the scenes, an even more significant event occurred. Alongside another Horowitz play, The Indian Wants the Bronx was performed. Jill Clayburgh, Pacino's then lover, stars in the film, which is titled The Sugar Plum. Pacino met Martin Bregman, who would transform his life through this project. Bregman became his manager because he recognized something unique in him. In the future, he would assist Pacino in landing some of his most famous parts in Dog Day Afternoon, Serpico, and The Godfather. Pacino later stated that his career might not have developed as it did if Bregman had not been there. In Does a Tiger Wear a Necktie?, Pacino debuted on Broadway a year later. In 1969, Don Peterson's play debuted at the Belasco Theater. In order to address themes of addiction and salvation, it recounted the tale of young drug addicts in a rehabilitation facility. Playing Bickham was Pacino, disturbed young addict who hides serious emotional wounds behind a hardened facade. After 9 previews, the production only ran for 39 performances, yet it made an impression. He was described as a thug with a poetic spirit by Newsweek's Jack Kroll. He was awarded Broadway's Most Promising New Actor by Variety. He was the Tony Award winner for Best Featured Actor in a Play at the age of just 29. That was the turning point. After years of preparation, Pacino was able to give his characters a great deal of complexity. At one of the world's most prestigious acting schools, the Actors Studio in New York City, he had trained under Lee Strasberg. Strasberg was an expert in method acting, training performers to use their own feelings to produce authentic portrayals. Training under Strasberg, Pacino later claimed, gave him the self-assurance to pursue acting full-time. Not only was Al Pacino's path to portraying Michael Corleone in The Godfather challenging, but it was a struggle. His performance is now considered legendary. However, the entire project was almost ruined by the casting decision back in 1972. Paramount Pictures was looking for a bankable celebrity, such as Robert Redford, Warren Beatty, or Jack Nicholson. Ryan O'Neal, perhaps. Pacino was not very well known at the time. He had a solid stage history but only one film credit. However, the studio didn't find that sufficient. He was not regarded by them as a leading man. They were looking for someone taller and more like a Hollywood celebrity. That was not Francis Ford Coppola's opinion. After seeing Pacino on Broadway, he thought he would be ideal for Michael Corleone. Pacino's ability to depict Michael's journey from a naive war hero to a vicious mafia lord was something he saw in him that no one else did. Incessant arguments with the studio resulted from Coppola's refusal to compromise. At one point, Coppola received an ultimatum from Paramount, who tried James Caan for the character of Michael. If Caan portrayed Sonny Corleone, Pacino could stay. Filming began, but the studio remained unconvinced. After seeing early video of Pacino's performance, they demanded that he leave. Coppola understood that he needed to quickly establish Pacino's value. He made the decision to record the scene of the restaurant assassination earlier than anticipated. It was a turning point, Michael's first actual foray into the world of mafia. Everything changed when the Paramount execs watched it. They at last realized what Coppola had been observing all along. Pacino was more than good. He left an enduring impression. His role in the movie was set in stone from that point on. Everything changed for him because of that role. He was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his performance, despite the fact that many people thought he should have won Best Actor. He felt marginalized, so he refused to attend the event in protest. Nevertheless, his career took off even without the victory. The Godfather made Pacino a star, earned over $250 million on a $6 million budget, and took home the Best Picture Oscar. His performance as Michael was commended for its understated passion and his ability to convey so much with a single look. During the restaurant scene, that icy gaze turned into one of the most memorable scenes in movie history. But it wasn't a simple journey. Later on, Pacino acknowledged that he was afraid while filming. The strain was too much. The continual fear of losing his job made it difficult for him to concentrate. He even had a serious injury to his ankle while filming a scene involving an escape. He had to have injections to stay alive since the pain was so severe. Oddly, he felt relief at first after the injury. He was afraid about losing his job. This felt less stressful than having to prove himself at the time. Coppola did everything he could to support Pacino since he understood how much he was hurting. He changed the shooting schedule so he could get more comfortable in the part. Pacino's co-star Diane Keaton, who became his emotional support system on set, was another person he turned to. They frequently laughed together after hard scenes because she helped lighten the mood. Pacino would subsequently remark that he might not have survived if Coppola hadn't believed in him. Pacino played Frank Serpico in the 1973 film Serpico, who was a real-life NYPD officer who exposed corruption in the force. Pacino spent time with the actual Serpico to learn his speech and movements in order to prepare for the role. The profound sensation of loneliness that accompanied defying his fellow officers was something he wished to comprehend. There were difficulties with the production from the beginning. Shortly before production began, Lumet took over as director in place of John G. Avildsen. The location was actual New York streets, and the filming was done in the summer of 1973. There was an intense mood on set because of the heat and Lumet's fast-paced directing style. Pacino received a Golden Globe and an Academy Award nomination for his performance. Despite having a modest budget of a few $1,000,000, the movie brought in around $30 million at the box office. With time, Serpico emerged as a seminal film in the criminal genre, and Pacino's performance is still among his most potent. 10 years later, in 1983, Pacino played one of his most famous parts in Scarface. He portrayed Tony Montana, an influential figure in Miami's drug trafficking who is a Cuban immigrant. Adapted for the excess and brutality of the 1980s, the picture was based on the 1932 classic and was directed by Brian De Palma and written by Oliver Stone. Tony Montana is relentless, ambitious, and vicious. He makes up his mind as soon as he lands in the United States to accept whatever he desires. Pacino devoted himself to the part, creating every aspect of Tony's character. He had meticulously rehearsed his mannerisms, accent, and even how he held a rifle. His hand was severely burned while filming as he grabbed the barrel of a hot gun. Despite the production delay, the injury demonstrated his commitment to giving the character a sense of realism. Upon its release, the movie drew criticism. Its excessive violence and obscenity were criticized. Parts of the movie had to be filmed in Los Angeles because of the Miami Cuban community's protests about the way immigrants were portrayed. The dispute did not prevent Scarface from gaining popularity. After earning $66 million globally, it became a cult favorite. Tony Montana's rise and fall is a warning about power and greed. The movie's impact extended into hip-hop, video games, and mainstream culture, and lines like "Say hello to my little friend" became iconic. Over time, Scarface came to be regarded as one of the best gangster movies ever produced. In Scent of a Woman, 1992, Pacino portrayed a completely different type of character, a part for which he ultimately took home the Best Actor Oscar. In the film, he portrayed Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade, a blind and resentful Army veteran who spends a weekend with Chris O'Donnell's character, Charlie Sims, a young preschooler. As Slade battles his own inner darkness in secret while teaching Charlie life lessons, the movie chronicles their journey. In order to prepare for the part, Pacino blocked his vision with thick contact lenses. Even when the cameras weren't rolling, he utilized a cane to make his blindness seem normal. Slade became one of the most unforgettable characters of his career because of his performance, which struck a mix between humor and passion. The sequence in which Slade, who is blind, leads a young woman in a flawless dance is one of the movie's most well-known scenes. Scarface made a big splash when the movie came out in theaters in 1983. It was criticized for its severe violence, frequent use of foul language, and what they perceived as its celebration of drug culture. Only 20 minutes into the movie, the chainsaw scene startled viewers. Some, such as authors John Irving and Kurt Vonnegut, even left screenings. The dispute, however, continued after that. Miami's Cuban immigrant population demonstrated, claiming that the movie depicted them as drug dealers and criminals. They felt that it made their neighborhood the face of Miami's drug trade and perpetuated negative perceptions. Even insiders in Hollywood anticipated trouble. According to reports, Martin Scorsese told Stephen Bauer, who portrayed Tony Montana's best buddy, that Hollywood would despise the movie because it revealed their own hypocrisy. It was a huge success, though, earning more than $134 million globally on a $31 million budget. The character's hallmark phrase, "Who are," became instantly identifiable after Pacino's acclaimed performance. One actor who had already given some of the best performances in movie history was rewarded with an Oscar that was considered long overdue. The movie developed a second life over time, particularly in the Latino and hip-hop communities, where Tony Montana represented willpower and drive. It turned into a cult favorite. Arguments were only heightened by that surge in popularity. Has Scarface grown to represent the very thing it denounced, or does it serve as a warning against excess? The debate is still going strong today, demonstrating that some movies never go out of style. Years later, Pacino starred in another contentious part in the 2018 HBO movie Paterno, which was based on the Penn State child abuse case. Joe Paterno, a football great with nearly 400 career victories, had his reputation ruined over a pivotal two-week period in 2011. For sexually abusing young boys, Jerry Sandusky, his former aide, had been jailed. Later, Sandusky received a prison term ranging from 30 to 60 years. The movie posed one unsettling query. What was Paterno's knowledge? A man divided between his football enterprise and the escalating controversy was depicted in Pacino's performance. Paterno recounts in one scenario an assistant coach's 2001 complaint that Sandusky had molested a kid during a team shower. Paterno told university authorities, but he never followed up. His entire construction was dominated by that choice. Although Pacino received plaudits from critics for capturing Paterno's inner turmoil, the movie itself split viewers. Paterno was perceived by some as a scapegoat, while others thought he had ignored the situation. The film sparked protests from more than 300 of his former players who said it unjustly tarnished his legacy. Paterno passed away from lung cancer at the age of 85, just months after losing his job at Penn State. The movie didn't choose a side. Viewers were instead forced to determine if Paterno was just caught in a system that failed everyone or if he was guilty of inaction. In 2013, Pacino took on another contentious role alongside Phil Spector on HBO. In addition to his unusual personal life, the film examined the life of the renowned music producer who revolutionized sound in the 1960s. Spector was charged in 2003 with killing actress Lana Clarkson at his estate. His interaction with Helen Mirren's character, defense lawyer Linda Kenny Botten, who questioned whether he could receive a fair trial, was the main subject of the film. In contrast to a normal courtroom drama, Phil Spector did not concentrate on the court case. It depicted a man losing command of his own story instead. Was he a genius misunderstood, or was he just what everyone thought he was? The movie never provided a definitive response, leaving viewers just as torn as they were when the story first made news. Off-screen, Pacino dealt with his own personal struggles. He found out in 2011 that he had lost $50 million. He had been involved in a Ponzi scam with Kenneth Starr, his longtime accountant. Pacino was all but destroyed in a single day after decades of making millions of dollars per picture. Starr has managed the finances of Hollywood's top stars and established a solid reputation as a reliable financial counselor. He had been stealing from them in the background. After the plan fell through, he was taken into custody and given a 7-year prison sentence. After returning from a lavish trip to Europe, Pacino discovered that the money had vanished. He wrote about his realization of the full scope of the betrayal in his memoir, Sonny Boy. I started with $50 million and ended up with nothing. Pacino took up unexpected projects to help him heal. He starred in Jack and Jill, a movie he subsequently said he did purely for the money. He even made appearances in advertisements and gave speeches. He referred to that period as a crazy montage of loss. However, it ultimately taught him to be resilient. No one is above the law, not even in Hollywood. Actor Al Pacino has always been more than that. He's always told stories and finds purpose in the parts he plays and the tasks he undertakes. His love for acting extends beyond the stage. His goal is to comprehend, dissect, and impart the craft to others. He moved behind the camera as a result of that drive. In 1996, he worked on his first significant project as a director, Looking for Richard. This was not a conventional movie. It was simultaneously a performance, a documentary, and a personal trip. Pacino aimed to demonstrate Shakespeare's continued relevance. Richard III, a play about ambition and power, was his choice, and he set out to demonstrate that its themes are still relevant today. The movie alternates between many styles. Actors Alec Baldwin, Winona Ryder, and Kevin Spacey have portrayed scenes from Richard III in dramatizations. Among the performers and academics interviewed are Vanessa Redgrave and Kenneth Branagh. The movie did well. The documentary won the 1997 Directors Guild of America Award for Outstanding Directorial Achievement. Its ability to make Shakespeare interesting and approachable won accolades from critics. It was outrageously enjoyable and a terrific adventure, according to Peter Travers. In 2000, he directed Chinese Coffee, 4 years later. The nature of this endeavor was entirely different. It was not about literature or history. Two men were seated in a room conversing. The movie was based on an Ira Lewis play, as well as Pacino's 1992 theatrical performance. The narrative centers on Jake Mannheim, a photographer portrayed by Jerry Orbach, and Harry Levine, a poor writer portrayed by Pacino. It takes place during one night in Greenwich Village in 1982, during which the two friends engage in a protracted and passionate discourse. In 2000, the Telluride Film Festival hosted its debut. And at the Tribeca Film Festival afterwards. Although it was not widely viewed, its candor was valued by those who did see it. It was eventually made available to a wider audience in 2007 when it was published on DVD as part of a box set called Pacino, An Actor's Vision. Pacino has devoted years to training the next generation of performers in addition to directing. He has served as co-president of the Actors Studio since 2000, alongside Ellen Burstyn and Harvey Keitel. This isn't your typical acting school. Some of history's finest actors received their training there. Legends like Lee Strasberg and Charlie Laughton taught Pacino there. He has consistently claimed that the studio transformed his life. He now assists it in helping others do the same. Pacino believes that performers can take chances at the Actors Studio. Success and notoriety are not the point. It involves challenging oneself and learning without fear. James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, Paul Newman, and Jack Nicholson were among the many Hollywood greats that attended this institution. Pacino still leads workshops and conversations with young performers. Technique is not all he teaches. He urges students to study literature, philosophy, and other subjects. According to him, acting is more than just giving a good performance. It's about comprehending life. Al Pacino has been in the news all his life. However, he never made that step in terms of marriage. He stayed single throughout his life, even after having well-publicized relationships with Diane Keaton, Beverly D'Angelo, and Kathleen Quinlan. He clarified why in his memoir, Sonny Boy, published in 2024. He never thought marriage would improve his life. Even the agony train's entrance, he said. Personal worries formed his views on commitment, and no relationship ever altered them. His romance with Diane Keaton is among the most well-known in Hollywood. In 1972, they met while working on The Godfather. He was mysterious and attractive to her. For years, their relationship was intermittent. Keaton, however, had had enough by 1990. She gave him a warning during the production of The Godfather Part 3, "Commit or it's over." Pacino turned away after refusing. Kathleen Quinlan was involved in another meaningful relationship earlier. 1979 was when they first met. During an event that Lee Strasberg, an acting coach, was throwing. For several years, the two were inseparable and even traveled around Europe together. Quinlan was the closest Pacino ever got to marriage, he later said, but he ultimately backed out. He was devastated by that choice for many years. Fatherhood became a significant aspect of his life, despite the fact that he never married. He and 29-year-old Nor Alfallah welcomed their fourth child, a son named Roman, in June 2023 when he was 83 years old. Many were astonished to learn of it, particularly after rumors circulated that Pacino had asked for a paternity test. He just didn't think he was capable of having kids anymore. He once again embraced fatherhood after the results showed that Roman was his. Although their relationship was private, Pacino and Alfallah started dating in 2020, amid the pandemic. To April 2022. Alfallah was known to date older guys, but their 54-year age difference attracted notice. Clint Eastwood and Mick Jagger have previously been associated with her. Pacino has had 3 children, but Roman is her first. Along with his oldest daughter Julie Marie, Beverly D'Angelo gave birth to twins Anton James and Olivia Rose in 2001. Born in 1989 with Jan Tarrant as their acting teacher. It transformed his life to become a father again at the age of 83. He didn't want to go through what his own father did to him when he was a child. He continued to be involved even after he and Alfallah parted ways. Via video conversations, he and Roman communicate, and they even play harmonica together. Pacino is still employed at 84. His planned endeavors demonstrate that he has no intention of slowing down, as evidenced by his role in House of Gucci in 2021. Modi, a Johnny Depp-directed movie on Italian artist Amedeo Modigliani, is among the most eagerly awaited. 3 difficult days in Modigliani's life are followed in the movie as he battles his personal and artistic demons. Pacino is starring in The Ritual as well. A scary movie that is based on Emma Schmidt's actual exorcisms. Released on April 18, 2025, the film centers on 2 priests who battle their personal pasts while executing risky exorcisms. His involvement in Billy Knight's murder and Castro's murder further demonstrates his unwavering love of stories. Pacino views acting as more than just a job. It's what got him through the most difficult times in his life. He claims it saved his life a lot. He has faced many challenges in his life. A close call with death in 2020 permanently altered his perspective. He lost his pulse while unwell and needed paramedics to resuscitate him. He was then persuaded that there was no afterlife. He publicly held that belief. Pacino is still active at this point in his life, still a father, and still thinking back on his experiences. He never took the conventional route, but it didn't stop him from leading a full life. He is still one of the most intriguing characters in Hollywood, whether he is on or off screen.